It was a Thursday afternoon when my phone rang, an ordinary day that was about to become the dividing line between the life I knew and the storm that followed. I had just stepped out of the bakery, the scent of warm cinnamon rolls still clinging to my coat. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I smiled as I saw the name flash across the screen. Ryan read, my husband. Maybe he was calling to say he missed me or wanted to go out for dinner. Little did I know, the man on the other end of the line was no longer my husband. At least not in any way that mattered. "Hey, babe," I answered, cheerful. His voice was cold, too calm. It hit me like a splash of ice water. "I'm divorcing you," he said bluntly, "and by the way, I've already sold the house." I froze in the middle of the sidewalk. What are you talking about?" I asked, half laughing, waiting for the punchline. But then he laughed his laugh. That cruel, mocking chuckle I had never heard before. One that didn't belong to the man I married. It didn't belong to Ryan, the one who used to hold my hand during thunderstorms and kiss my forehead when I couldn't sleep. No, this laugh belonged to a stranger. I said, "I've sold the house. You're not on the deed, remember. That was your idea. Simpler paperwork, right?" he said with venomous satisfaction. "Anyway, pack up if you're still there. You've got maybe a week." And then click, the call ended. The phone slipped from my fingers, landing screen down on the concrete. I didn't even notice. My chest tightened, the air knocked out of me as if I'd been punched. I could hear people passing by, muffled voices, car horns in the distance, but none of it felt real. I was standing still while the world kept spinning. How could he? Everything we built, 10 years of laughter, shared dreams, holidays, late-night talks, was reduced to a 2-minute phone call and a laugh. A cruel, heartless laugh. That night, I sat on the floor of our living room, the living room that would soon belong to someone else. I stared at the bare walls, the couch we picked together, the wedding photo on the mantel. My reflection in the window stared back at me, hollow and wide-eyed. I thought back to the past year, the long business trips, the missed calls, the way he flinched when I reached for his phone, the way he'd say, "Don't be dramatic," whenever I asked if something was wrong. I wasn't crazy. I was right. I just didn't want to see it. What hurt the most wasn't losing the house. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the coldness, the ease with which he discarded me, as if I was just a chapter he was tired of reading. But even through the fog of tears and disbelief, something deep inside me stirred. This wasn't the end. No, he ended the marriage. He sold the house. He thought he'd broken me. But he'd just given me a reason to rise. The morning after the call, I woke up on the couch with a stiff neck, swollen eyes, and the same sick knot in my stomach. For a brief second, I forgot. For a moment, I thought it was all a nightmare. Then I saw the packed boxes. The silence, the wedding photo still lying face down where I'd thrown it. It was all real. I didn't cry that day. I didn't scream. I just moved like a ghost, floating through each room, touching the furniture, the walls, the memories, knowing they no longer belonged to me. I had 7 days. 7 days to leave the home I thought I'd grow old in. He didn't call again. I tried to reach out at first, desperate for closure, for answers. But Ryan ignored every message. It was like I never existed, like I was just another mistake he'd swept under a rug. And then, as if the universe hadn't been cruel enough, the truth began to unravel itself, thread by thread. It started when I visited our old attorney, the one who handled the house years ago. I wanted to know how he sold it without my consent. I was so sure I was on the deed, but I wasn't. He had you sign a quitclaim deed 2 years ago. The attorney said gently, flipping through the papers. He said it was for refinancing. You signed it. I remembered now. I'd been tired, distracted. He said we were consolidating to lower the mortgage. I trusted him. He lied right to my face, and it didn't stop there. The finances were worse than I imagined. Ryan had drained our joint account weeks ago, cancelled my credit cards, even transferred our investments into an account under his name only. And he had done it all before that phone call. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a calculated ambush. I had nothing. No money, no house, no husband, but I still had me. For the first time in 10 years, I stood in front of a mirror and looked, really looked, at myself. Not as Ryan's wife, not as the woman who played supportive partner and forgave too much. I saw a woman who had been asleep in her own life. And she was finally waking up. I moved into my best friend Alia's spare room. She welcomed me without questions, without pity. Just love and strong coffee. I always thought something was off about him, she said softly one night. But you were in love. You believed in him. I nodded. I had believed in him more than I believed in myself. Not anymore. The days that followed were a strange mix of grief and grit. I cried when no one was looking, but in the daylight I worked. I took a job at a local nonprofit. I began volunteering on weekends. I took back control, one spreadsheet, one budget, one deep breath at a time. And in the quiet moments, I planned. Not for revenge, not the petty kind, but for truth, for justice, for the kind of payback that doesn't come with yelling or slamming doors, but with power and proof. Because the more I dug, the more I uncovered. Ryan hadn't just sold the house. He had forged signatures, lied on documents, and hidden assets. He was dirty, and he thought he was untouchable. He thought I'd disappear, collapse, crawl away, and start over like some sad little cliché. But he had no idea who I was becoming. He forgot one simple truth. Revenge didn't come to me as fire. It came as clarity. I stopped asking, why did he do this? And started asking, what can I do now? That shift changed everything. It started small. I gathered every document I could find. Old emails, tax returns, bank statements, legal files. Alia helped me build a paper trail. She used to work in corporate law before switching careers. And with her sharp mind and even sharper instincts, she became more than a friend. She became my ally. Together, we pieced together the puzzle Ryan thought he had hidden well. Turns out, my dear husband wasn't just cruel. He was reckless. His new girlfriend, a 26-year-old assistant from his firm, flashing luxury purses on Instagram like trophies. One deep scroll revealed the truth. She was tagging herself in restaurants Ryan and I used to love, weeks before the divorce call. In one post, she was in our bedroom, my bedroom, wearing my robe, and the house he sold. He had underreported its value. It had gone to a shady real estate investor, who, after a few more searches, turned out to be his college friend, a placeholder buyer, a scam. The sale, fraudulent, the money, likely stashed offshore or hidden under layers of fake business losses. I wasn't just dealing with a cheating husband, I was dealing with a con artist in a suit, but Ryan had underestimated me. He always had. He thought I was weak because I was quiet, that I was blind because I trusted him, that I was done because he left. He didn't know that every sleepless night, every tear I wiped away was fuel. I was no longer trying to get back what I lost. I was building something new, something stronger. I hired a forensic accountant with Alia's help and pro bono advice. We tracked suspicious financial transfers, discovered a secret company under Ryan's name with falsified expense reports, and traced payments that looked a lot like hush money. There was even a company car in his assistant's name paid for by a consulting firm. That didn't exist 2 years ago. This wasn't just betrayal, it was criminal, so I took it to the only place that mattered, court. I filed for divorce officially, even though he claimed to have already done so. Turns out he hadn't. He'd only told me that on the phone to throw me off. Classic move from a coward. When he was served with the papers, I imagined his smug little smirk melting into panic. I hoped his laugh caught in his throat. But I wasn't done. I filed a civil suit for fraud regarding the house sale. With my lawyer, we challenged the legality of the transaction and subpoenaed his financial records. The moment we involved a judge, things started crumbling. His friend backed out, the buyer retracted. The sale was frozen, and the IRS was not amused by what they were seeing. But the sweetest part, he didn't even see it coming. Ryan thought I'd disappear quietly. He thought I'd move on, cry it out, and chalk it up to bad luck. But I had no intention of disappearing. I was rebuilding, but not just my life. I was rebuilding the narrative he had taken so much from me. My home, my trust, my peace. Now I was taking back something he never expected. They say karma takes time. But when it comes, it never knocks, it crashes. 3 months after I filed the lawsuit, the court date arrived. Ryan walked in with the same smugness. I remembered the confidence of a man who believed he was above consequence. Dressed in a sharp navy suit, flanked by a high-priced lawyer and holding hands with his assistant. Turned, girl, friend, like they were walking a red carpet. He didn't even glance at me, but I looked him straight in the eyes, and I smiled, because I knew something he didn't. Behind the scenes, while he was flaunting his freedom, I'd handed over every shady transaction and document to my attorney. The forensic accountant had compiled a 78-page report, neatly detailing his embezzlement, fraudulent house sale, and tax evasion. And we brought it all to court. The moment the judge looked over the documents and raised an eyebrow, I knew the tide had turned. This isn't just a divorce, the judge said, tapping the files. This borders on criminal misconduct. You may want to retain separate counsel for that. Ryan's smirk cracked. The court froze the rest of his assets immediately. His accounts were seized for investigation. The house was put into legal limbo, and the title reverted until a proper financial audit could be completed. In the divorce, I walked away with more than I expected. The judge awarded me a full financial settlement, ownership of the house pending fraud case results, retroactive spousal support for the years I'd supported Ryan through his startups that turned out to be shells. And best of all, his name was now flagged by both the IRS and state fraud investigators. He had to sell his car, his watches, and even move out of his fancy apartment. His assistant, she disappeared the moment the headlines started rolling in. Apparently, she wasn't interested in dating someone under federal investigation. Poor Ryan, he tried to reach out once, sent me a text at 2:13 a.m. You really did all that, you're cold. I stared at it for a second, then deleted it. No response. That's not cold. That's closure. Now, I live in a quiet cottage outside the city, surrounded by sunflowers and silence that heals. I drink my coffee slowly now. I read books that make me feel alive. I laugh, really laugh. Not the forced smiles of pretending everything's okay, but the kind that comes from being free. And I'm no longer angry, because the best revenge isn't rage or retaliation. It's peace. It's moving on while they're still stuck in the chaos they created. It's knowing they threw you into the fire, and you rose from it, stronger, sharper, and shining like never before. Ryan taught me something, in the end. He showed me exactly who I never want to be, and for that I thank him. From the ashes of what he tried to destroy, I built a life on my own terms, and trust me,